Good evening. The hour of 6:30 PM having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning Board. First, I'm going to put on my glasses, so bear with me. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the homepage and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. Will the staff please conduct the roll?
Harold Farrington,
Present.
Roberta Mastrogiovanni,
Present.
Mayor Jay Kahn, Councilor Mike Remy, Sarah Vazani, Ryan Clancy,
Here.
Kenneth Cost,
Here.
Armando Rangel,
Here.
Gail Summers, Randon Markelin, Tammy Adams, Michael Hafer.
Thank you. Okay. Quorum is present. At this time, we'll move to a review of the minutes of our previous meeting. May I ask for a motion to approve the minutes of January 22nd, 2024?
I'd like to present a motion to approve the minutes of January 22nd, 2024.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Cost?
I second that.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or changes to the minutes? Naturally, I have some somewhere here. All right. I'd like to offer the following comments on the minutes. Line 54, I would recommend to delete the word "that." It's doesn't fit. Line 82, replace the word "this" with the words "the third."
So that would read tabling the third item.
Yes, thank you. Line 193, delete the word "was," add the word "and." And on 194, it's all part of the same sentence, delete the word "and." So I would like 193, 194 to read, the motion made by Councilor Remy and seconded by Roberta Mastrogiovanni was unanimously approved. And much deeper in, line 754, the word "abutter" is separated by the spelling check.
Is it salted or unsalted, there, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I think pretty salty. That's all I have. Okay. Given those comments, I think we're ready to move for a vote now. All those in favor of approving the minutes? Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you. All right. Now we'll move to a final vote on conditional approvals. As a matter of practice, the Planning Board will issue a final vote on all conditionally approved plans after all of the conditions precedent have been met. This final vote will be the final approval and will start the 30-day appeal clock. Are there any applications tonight that are ready for a final vote?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Evan Clements, planner. We have two applications ready for final approval this evening. The first one is SPR 0222, modification number 1, site plan Aroma Joe's at 348 West Street. Applicant Brickstone Land Use Consultants, on behalf of owners West Street AJ LLC and AB LLC, have proposed a boundary line adjustment that would transfer .022 acres of land from the Granite State Car Wash site at 364 West Street to the Aroma Joe's site at 384 West Street. Modifications to the layout, including the existing queuing area on the Aroma Joe's site, were also included with this application. All precedent conditions of approval for this application has been met, and staff recommend the board vote on final approval.
Thank you, Mr. Clement. May I ask for a motion for final approval?
I would like to move to issue final approval for SPR-02-22 for modification number 1.
A second?
And I second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Cost. Any discussion? All right. Seeing none, let's move for a vote on final approval for SPR-02-22, modification number 1. All those in favor? Any opposed? Final approval is granted to SPR-02-22, modification number 1. Thank you. Mr. Clement, any others?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the other application is SPR 03-19, modification number 3. Site plan, Keene Mini Storage, new building located at 678 Marlborough Road. Applicant SVE Associates, on behalf of the owner, Keene Mini Storage LLC, have proposed to construct a 5,200 square foot climate-controlled storage building on the property. Parcel is 9.5 acres in size and is located in the industrial district. All precedent conditions of approval for this application has been met, and staff is recommending that the board grant this project final approval.
Thank you, Mr. Clements. At this time, I would ask for a motion for final approval.
We'd like to move to issue final approval for SPR-03-19, modification number 3.
And a second?
And second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? So let's move now to a vote. All those in favor of issuing final approval for SPR 03-19, modification number 3? Any opposed? Final approval is issued for SPR-03-19, modification number 3. Thank you. Okay. We do have now an extension request. An extension request for S-08-23, subdivision Markham, 150 Congress Street. Applicant and owner Markham Corporation requests a first extension to the deadline to achieve active and substantial development for the subdivision application S-08-23 for the subdivision of the parcel at 150 Congress Street, TMP number 598-002-000, into 2 lots and the removal of pavement and portions of an existing tunnel structure. The parcel is 31 acres and is located in the Industrial Park District. At this time, I would invite the applicant to speak on the request.
Hi.
If you'd please state your name and address, thank you. Oh, yeah, and you need the microphone till the green light is on. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Goki. I'm representing Markham Lodge. Any more?
You just give a brief explanation for the status of the project and why you need a little bit more time.
Okay. So we've had several delays, most notably the tunnel that connects our two buildings. Our fiber optic lines run through there, and we've had some struggles working with Consolidated and Eversource, getting the new lines run, and then our own internal IT department, getting that resolved. It is still not resolved. We're hopeful, actually, this week. We say that every week. So then we did start some demolition on the tunnels, but we had to halt it because of the fiber optic. And then hopefully we get the contractor to come back and finish that. There's another section of the pavement kind of to the west of the tunnel that also needed to be taken care of, and that is also not. That was just winter came, and so we're looking to resolve all that shortly, but not likely by the time that we had initially asked for.
Okay, thank you. Do the board members have any questions for the applicant? Seeing none. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for the request.
Move to grant a 180-day extension to the timeframe to satisfy the precedent conditions of approval for the subdivision application S-08-23.
Second?
And I second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll look for a vote for the motion to approve the extension. All those in favor? Any opposed? Extension request is granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing. PB-2024-01, Surface Water Protection and Conditional Use Permit, 186 Gun Road. Applicants and owners Ashley and Peter Green request a reduction in the surface water protection buffer from 75 feet to 30 feet to allow for the future subdivision and development of the parcel at 186 Gun Road, TMP number 205-013-000. The parcel is 11 acres and is located in the rural district. I think as this is a continuation, we'll just ask the applicant at this time.
I've got a couple things I'd like to start the discussion with, if you wouldn't mind, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
absolutely, Mr. Clements, please.
So just to remind the board, we heard this application in January. Due to inclement weather, the Conservation Commission was not able to go out and walk the site that they had wanted to, so we had decided to continue the public hearing to this meeting this evening to give the Conservation Commission an opportunity to go out and then make a recommendation as is required by the conditional use permit requirements. The Vice Chair of the Commission has since submitted a letter to the board. I distributed that on Friday over the weekend. If you'd like, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read the letter into the record.
I think that would be good, thank you.
Okay. So it's from Andrew Madison, Vice Chair of the Keene Conservation Commission and City Councilor from Ward 3. To the members of the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission conducted a site visit at 186 Gun Road on Tuesday, February 13th. The Commission then discussed application PB 2024-01 at the property owner's request to reduce the surface water protection buffer during our February 20th meeting. With 2 votes in favor and 5 votes against, the Commission did not pass a recommendation that the surface water buffer be reduced from 75 feet to 30 feet. The Commission expressed concerns regarding the presence of wildlife noted during the site visit. Specifically, the abundance of hemlock and presence of deer scat suggested that this area may be important bedding area for white-tailed deer, and that wetlands present in the subject area are likely to be important habitat for amphibians such as the spotted salamander. The subject area is also identified as supporting landscape in the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department's 2020 Wildlife Action Plan, identifying it within the top 50% of its habitat type, including hemlock hardwood, pine forest, and marsh shrub wetland. The Commission is also concerned about the potential for flooding and the loss of stormwater storage. Specifically, the Commission is concerned that the driveway associated with this project may exacerbate impacts from heavy precipitation events. The steep asphalt driveway in that location will likely provide a conduit for fast-moving runoff. This could have a negative effect on water quality and increase flooding and erosion risks downstream. The Commission reminds the Planning Board that heavy precipitation events are becoming more common and more severe as a result of climate change. Furthermore, the Commission is concerned with the effectiveness of the proposed infiltration trenches and septic leach fields. Test pits dug at the site indicate bedrock at a depth of 29 to 49 inches, with unconsolidated till present at depths of 20 inches or less. Although these are well-drained soils, they may develop seasonally high water tables that may inhibit infiltration from septic leach fields or the stormwater infiltration trenches. Moreover, the stormwater infiltration trenches are at a risk of siltation that could result in a failure of the drainage system if it is not regularly maintained. Finally, the Conservation Commission wishes to be cautious about setting a precedent for development within the surface water protection buffer. Although zoning changes in the rural district have potential to alleviate the region's housing crisis, it is appropriate that development be balanced with the needs of flood mitigation and the protection of our delicate local ecosystems. The Conservation Commission would like to acknowledge and express its appreciation for the property owner's willingness to meet with us, facilitate a site visit, as well as their efforts to address our concerns. In the event the Planning Board approves this application, the Conservation Commission requests that the applicant be required to implement the mitigation actions recommended by their consultant, including the installation of infiltration trenches around dwellings and native plantings along the driveway. We also request that the applicant be required to implement best management practices, including erosion control measures. Finally, the Conservation Commission recommends that a percolation test be performed during winter and spring to evaluate soil drainage during wet months. Respectfully submitted. I would also just like to say, Mr. Chairman, that in preparation of this continuation, I did go back and review the minutes from the January meeting to just kind of see where we were at and how best to move forward with this application. And I identified 4 areas that I feel like the board has not gotten answers on. So the first of 4 is the proposed use and or activity cannot be located in a manner to avoid encroachment into the surface water protection overlay district. During the discussion of this application in January, general comments were made by the property owner that the proposed location is the only suitable building site. However, the entire property has not been surveyed. A wetland delineation of the entire 11 acres has not been conducted. Anecdotal comments saying that this is the only viable site, in staff's opinion, isn't really enough, especially when some of the concerns raised by the property owner for why this location is suitable were related to existing easements for public service of New Hampshire, and then their personal views of their property in the surrounding area. So we would recommend that the board discuss this point further to attempt to get more information about the true best suitability of this proposed house site. The other point is the encroachment into the buffer area has been minimized to the maximum extent possible, including reasonable modification of the scale or design of the proposed use. So initially, when this application was submitted, the consultant told us that there was only going to be buffer impacts from the reduced buffer for the driveway. In further discussion with the consultant, it was revealed that it's going to be over 10,000 square feet of buffer impact, including impact to the buffer for site development and house sitting. The site plan that was submitted to the board does not depict that additional buffer impact. So I would recommend the board at the very least request an updated site plan that shows that additional buffer impact, or really come to the bottom of how many square feet of buffer are going to be impacted by this proposal. Also, the nature, design, sitting, and scale of the proposed use and the characteristics of the site, including but not limited to topography, soils, vegetation, habitat, are such that when taken as a whole, will avoid the potential for adverse impacts to the surface water resource. The proposed, I was at the site visit for the Conservation Commission. The proposed house site is a shelf on the side of a fairly notable hill, and is very small. And the proposed driveway with the infiltration trenches puts that development basically at the edge of the wetland. Any real use of the property with like outside utility is going to be near zero. The driveway, the turnaround, the septic system, and the house itself are basically going to eat up every square inch of developable area on this site. And the end user is going to have no outdoor utility. It's going to be completely protected by the wetland buffer. Staff has large concerns over the slow encroachment into the buffer just from the use of the property. And basically, if we're worried about impacts to the buffer in the future, the site is going to be very isolated out in the rural area of the town. Enforcement will be challenging, to say the least. And practically speaking, there's a very real chance that slow encroachment of the buffer will take place just from the use of the property itself. And then lastly, the intent of the wetland buffer reduction is to provide flexibility for a parcel that is encumbered by the buffer. And it is not really designed to be an option to create a non-viable parcel and make it viable. The language for the buffer reduction is pretty clear. It uses the word extraordinary, and it refers to extraordinary mitigation of the wetland resource, replication of the wetland resource, and restoration of the wetland resource. And I would ask the board to deliberate if this proposal is offering that and meets that threshold. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Clements. Okay, so at this time, I would invite the applicant to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I did want to just share something.
I know you were just here last month, but if you would state your name and address, that would be great.
Of course,
you.
sorry. Ashley Green, 186 Gun Road. The babysitter got sick, so Peter's with the kids tonight. I did want to share something, and I just came with some notes because I don't want to waste your time by rambling. But I did want to say that Peter and I, we were discouraged by the outcome of the Conservation Commission. We had been hopeful when several committee members who attended the site visit spoke in favor of the project. And we were especially encouraged by the compliments that even other committee members gave Jason for the quality and the creativity of his mitigation plans, especially when it came to those spruce trees of yours and the permanence that they would provide for the homeowners and for the city down the road. We felt that we were able to speak to each of the areas of remaining concern with the extra mitigation work that we had done for the driveway and the approval from the city engineers for those plans. The law considers new driveways exempt from the buffer zone, and we thought that the development of those additional plans was a gesture of good faith and a way to go above and beyond what the law required. Another committee member raised a concern about how effective the septic system would be 100 years from now. I'm reading from the draft minutes of the meeting. And Jason noted that something as simple as annual maintenance would allay that concern, and also noted that those types of things, that's in the best interest of the homeowner as well to do that. This will always be next door to our home, and we want the best for the property and for the future family that would live there. So we wanted to show how seriously we took those opinions. As applicants, we felt really discouraged when the conversation turned away from our application to the dangers of the law itself or what might come down the road. One attendee kept reiterating that this was precedent-setting, and that the town would start to see all sorts of strange and scary things coming down the pipe with 2-acre subdivisions. He said this was only the beginning. As a family who saw that the exception was available and applied in good faith, we felt like we didn't stand much of a chance. So I know that the commission chose not to recommend the exception, and we do appreciate the work that they do and the fact that they volunteer their time. I don't feel that there could have been any mitigation measures that would have overcome their discomfort for the law itself, and the concern that if they recommended our application, they would have no precedent to recommend applications or to reject applications in the future. So we do appreciate the importance of precedent, and we feel like the care we've put into this application and the high standard we've tried to meet makes it a strong precedent to set. So we just wanted to say that we did our very best to meet every concern, and I hope that you, the planning board, does feel that we've risen to what the law asks of us. We tried to move through the application as responsibly as we could. We tried to be as extraordinary as we could with our mitigations. And we do understand that there can be mixed feelings when a law changes or a new exception like this is passed. And we truly appreciate the Conservation Committee members who made the motion to support the project and who seconded that and who voted in favor. I hope we won't be penalized for being the first to make use of the law. This would be a wonderful thing for our family, but also a chance to add a home and a family to our neighborhood. It is already a very developed road. There are more than 31 families on Gun Road, and we would love that chance for us and for whatever family might land there. So thank you.
And I did want to add a few comments regarding Mr. Clemens's, regarding the
Again, if
site.
you wouldn't mind just stating your name and
Yes,
address.
Jason Bolduck, Meridian Land Services. And as far as other locations, I did do a full wetland delineation for the entire parcel. We just haven't located those. So we focused on just this area. But due to the rest of the site, we focused on this because the Greens were looking to essentially just subdivide this corner of the property. And obviously, if we don't get through the CUP process, we don't want to go, it's a lot more money to survey the entire 11 acres instead of just the 2. There'd be a couple more days of field work just for the size of the property. And then as far as the impacts to the buffer, I believe they're clearly depicted on the plan that we submitted. That was to scale and with the setbacks clearly depicted on there. It was fairly transparent as to what we were trying to do with the exhibit. And as far as mitigation, nothing more has been added, essentially. We did do that driveway design, which, based on email from Evan, the engineer had approved it, saying it meets all the regulations and had no further comments. And then for restoration, there is no direct impacts to the wetlands. So we feel that that wouldn't be necessary.
Thank you.
And I think the only other thing we had wanted to add to the concerns for the wildlife is that the square footage of what would be developed is really just a half acre, really just a very tiny percent even of our 11-acre home site. We just wanted to point out that one of the things that makes the road so beautiful is that behind Gun Road to the north is over a mile of woods that's completely untouched and undeveloped. And since this property is not a migration corridor, we just wanted to point out that we're confident that there's this beautiful untouched woods for wildlife, and that this would be such a very small development that wouldn't need to be a concern.
Yes, and they did speak a lot in regards to wildlife. On the wildlife action plan, this is not in the highest ranked habitat. Across the street is, on top of the hill, and then out behind that stream in the lower area. But right where this development is proposed to be is not in that area. And again, back to your comment regarding the undeveloped, I did look on aerial. It's about a mile to the dam back there, and then beyond the dam is at least another mile. I didn't have time to measure that. From what I can tell on aerial, I haven't been on the ground. Doesn't seem to be developed other than that PSNH easement with the power lines going through.
Yeah, and just finally, most of us who live out on Gun Road live out there because we love nature. We love the woods, and I know Evan spoke of, very little outdoor utility, but our outdoor utility is just being in the woods and hiking and making use of that. And so even though it took me fewer than 10 minutes to drive here tonight from my house, we're actually not far from the city. So I hope that wouldn't really impede, to Evan's point about future visits out. But we try our best to kind of live in sync with nature out there. Thank you so much for giving us a chance to
Sure,
share extra comments.
absolutely. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open it to the board to ask any questions that they might have for the applicant. Mr. Cost?
Thank you. Well, I do have a question and just a couple thoughts. First of all, I certainly appreciate everything that you're going through to try to build a house here. And I believe in Keene, we have probably we do have the best planners. So our professional planning staff and the people who do the Conservation Commission are excellent as well. And so, as a planning board member, we take advice and listen to people and have great respect for that. I also, though, do appreciate that you want to provide a house, because we do have a housing shortage. I know we have a housing shortage at all income levels, and so any house is good. One thing that Mr. Clemens said is, and I think it sounds like you answered it, but maybe again, out of the whole 11 acres, there's just no way, and I know you've studied it and you're probably spending some money to do this, but there's no way to move the house a bit here or there or do something to get it further away from the area?
It's, we're not saying that it's not. We just haven't looked into it at this moment. We haven't surveyed that area of the parcel. We did delineate the wetlands, but until we get it on paper and apply the buffers and the setbacks and everything that you see on here, be further work.
Well,
to
and
do
I can speak to that, as a homeowners, and I appreciate the question. I know it's a good one. We chose this section because it's so far removed from our home that it has privacy for them and for us. And because the other option that we did look at, someone in the Environmental Commission suggested the site of our current pole barn would be a good home site. And we did look at that, and it has the same issues, and in fact is less, it's more problematic with the wetlands. The other possible site that Evan might have been referring to is to the west of our home. And the reason that we did not propose that is, and it's because there's a couple things. One, it's viewable from all of our windows in our yard. We have 3 young babies, and we value their safety and privacy in that sense. And it also has 2 right-of-ways, as I mentioned last time we met, by a neighbor and by the power companies to access the lines for the road. And it's used by just a lot of people. The community school bus twice a day parks there and waits for all the kids. We, if it turned out that that was the only place that we could subdivide, we would not move forward because of the impact to our neighbors, our community, and to us as homeowners. So for us, that's not a viable option, and if it ends here tonight, it will just end. And I know maybe that's anecdotal, but if that's helpful at all, that's why we haven't moved forward with that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? The one question I had, maybe I just missed it, but the reduced buffer in the original application was only for the driveway portion of the plan, but Mr. Clements said that perhaps to develop the site and also to build the house, there would be additional infringement on the buffer. Is it?
That is correct, and then I also did send a square footage, I wanna say it was around 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, it was about 3,000, 3,500 for the driveway, and then another 7 and change for grading and the house site.
The remainder of the development. And the intent all along was the entire development of the site. Because once we got it on paper and were able to apply the setbacks, the 75 chews up the real estate. So that's when we pursued the CUP to look into what could be done to have that as a viable site.
Yeah, I guess my question is more procedural maybe, and not so much, your answer here tonight, but is that documented for, the city planners to look at and for the planning board to evaluate? I mean, is there an updated plan that we could
We
look
haven't
at?
changed the plan. The only thing we have added since the original application was the driveway plan that was
Okay.
that was presented during the first planning board and then has since been reviewed.
Does this show right here?
Yes.
Yeah, so it is shown on the plan that we
Yep,
have.
so the plan is identical December 14th, 2023 as to what has been presented since the beginning.
But I think he's just, if I understand you, Mr. Chairman, you're wanting to know if on the plan that's before the board now, it is possible to see where in totality, all of the buffer.
Buffer reduction, yeah.
Reduction would be. And it is, on the plan, it's the proposed 4-bedroom house there, that's that square within the ring of spruce trees.
And that amount was, I have it directly in front of me from the staff report, it was 10,870 square feet, so.
Yes, I guess where I'm getting hung up, Mr. Chairman, is that the applicant is saying that there's 7,000 and change of additional impact to the buffer, and then they're saying they're gonna use the spruce trees as, at the very edge of the buffer. So you can see the spruce trees not interacting with the proposed site development. They're on the edge of the site development. So how can the spruce trees be on the buffer edge if you are infringing into the buffer to make room for the development?
So the spruce trees would be on the, so there's the 75-foot setback, but then there's the proposed 30-foot setback that we're proposing to get reduced to 30 feet. The spruce trees would be on the edge of that 30-foot new wetland buffer.
Okay, so I think I'm understanding where our miscommunication is coming from. So it's two separate issues that we're dealing with at the same time. You're asking for two things. You're asking for a wetland buffer reduction from 75 feet to 30 feet.
Correct.
And then you also need, in addition to that, the encroachment into the now 30-foot buffer for the driveway.
And to the best of our knowledge, with the driveways,
It's not exempt, it's a new lot. It's not an existing lot. The driveway is not exempt from the surface water,
Okay.
because it's gonna be a new driveway for a new lot.
so for new driveways.
Mhm.
Oh, that was, someone in the environmental commission said that she had looked at the law and understood new driveways to be exempt.
Yep, for an existing lot that predates the surface water ordinance, new driveways are
Mm.
exempt.
Oh,
Because this is
interesting.
gonna be a new lot, it's not exempt, which is why you need the CUP
Okay,
for both the buffer reduction and the driveway encroachment.
okay, I'm with you. Oh, well, I'm glad we did those extra mitigation plans then for the driveway.
So, to bounce off of Mr. Clemens's comments, yes, the building, the leach field, the well are beyond 30 feet from the wetland edge. The driveway is closer than 30 feet. The proposal is closer than 30 feet to the wetland edge on both sides. And that's due to the two wetlands on both sides coming down, and the only way to access that upland area is, there is no viable way to access that without going through a 30-foot buffer to be closer than 30 feet.
Ms. Master Giordano, you have any questions or comments for the applicant? Yeah.
I would say that the planners do a really thorough job about, making sure that we have a real clear picture of everything that, all the Ts have to be crossed, all the Is have to be dotted. So, I think for your particular plan, this may work, but my concern up in that Gun Road area would be future developments. You are one of the first, but for any future developments, it would be good if all the plans met. And there is a lot of runoff down Gun Road now. So I live on East Surrey Road, for example. We get a lot of runoff from Gun Road all the way down toward the golf course. So, yeah, it's a beautiful area, fortunate. And we do need more housing, but I think we have to do it, by the book. So, I appreciate all the hard work you guys have done, for sure.
Mr. Clancy, any questions?
Not to the applicant, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think we've exhausted our questions for you. Thank you. Appreciate you being here again.
Thank you.
So at this time, I think it's time, even though we've heard some, to see if staff has additional comments.
So the public hearing is still technically open, Mr. Chairman. I would recommend seeing if anybody else would like to speak on this application, then close the public hearing and then move into board deliberation.
Okay. So at this time, I would like to see if there's anyone in the audience from the public who would like to comment on this application. Can't see everybody, but just raise your hand if you would like to make a comment on this. Yeah, please come forward. No, why don't you come up to the microphone?
Sarah Vazani. Hi, how are you? I have a question about the letter that was written with the mitigation from the committee. Were you planning to, so it said when he was reading it earlier, it said there were several things they'd recommend if the board was going to approve your application. I guess my question for you guys would be, is that your plan to meet those items that the committee did offer if the board was going to approve your plan?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes, we, like I said, you know, with this being right next door and our neighbors, we're very willing and open to any conditional requests that are built into the plans. We actually talked a little bit about offering, kind of building in an agreement to do annual maintenance for the swells that are along the driveway to make sure that at no point do they overflow and stop working and add to runoff and some of these challenges. And we're happy to do that. Jason noted that any responsible homeowner, it would be in their best interest to do that. So that and any other recommendations, we're very, very willing to work with the planning board on that.
And to add to that, my recommendation would be to make it as conditions of approval and to be reviewed by the town engineer before issuing a building permit to make sure it meets all the criteria if it was to be approved tonight by the planning board.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the public or comments? Seeing none, I will close the public portion of the meeting. Now I guess I'll turn to staff.
So the only other thing that I'll add to this, Mr. Chairman, is that when staff and the planning board decided to change the lot size in the rural zone from 5 to 2 acres, a large part of our argument was that there were existing regulations on the book that would protect the environmental resources of the community. And so the surface water protection overlay is that in action. So I would encourage the members to seriously consider that as they deliberate on the merits of this application as it's presented.
Thank you. Let's see, I guess it makes sense to have a motion and then deliberation. Well, why don't we discuss kind of where we think we are on this in terms of obviously, the planning board can approve, we can deny, we can continue. Any opinions with respect to that? We can continue because the next planning board meeting is still within the 65-day window of the original application. Yeah, Mr. Rangel.
I have a question about continuing, because I hate to say no, but at the same time, I'm wondering if we did continue, what additional information we could maybe ask for. I know that in this letter, there's some concern about the proposed infiltration trenches and septic leach fields. I don't know if there's any other information we could really gather to help us make a decision. And if staff have any.
Well, staff mentioned four things, and there's a few things mentioned in the letter from the Conservation Commission, so we could be explicit in asking for additional information. Mr. Clancy, any comment?
Yeah, I think before we decide if we should vote down or continue or vote for, I do think answering some questions from staff and maybe having some deliberation would be good.
Okay.
May I continue? then?
Yes,
So I have,
please.
I have a quick comment, and then I have a few questions regarding the Conservation Commission's letter. Mr. Clements, one of your points was you were assuming that the current landowners or future landowners, if this was to be approved, you were presumptuous of them breaking the law or breaking code. So I think as a board and city staff, we shouldn't assume that future property owners are going to break the law. Just wanted to point that out. And in terms of this letter, so maybe these can be answered or can't be answered, but there was reference to, a lot of it was about the environment and animals around the area. So is deer scat or hemlocks an exemption or a concern when we're approving these types of things that would stop an approval? Is hemlock a rare species would, I guess, be my first question.
Are you asking about endangered species?
Yeah,
I do not believe a wildlife and endangered species analysis has been conducted on this property. You would be in your right to ask for one if you felt
Okay.
that was appropriate.
and for the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department's Wildlife Action Plan, and this being part of that zone, how big is this zone in that area? How many acres does that zone cover? Do we know?
I mean, the entire region is covered by that map.
Okay.
So I don't have at least 11 acres.
No, but in the letter, the Conservation Commission mentions that that it's supporting Landscapian, the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department's 2020 Wildlife Action Plan, identifying it within the 50% of habitat, including hemlock, hardwood, pine forest. So what percentage of this property is part of that?
100%.
Yeah, but how big is that in that area? Is it the whole, like, all of Cheshire County? Is that?
I mean, the
50%.
map is the entire state of
Okay.
New Hampshire. So if you're asking me for like the Gun Road neighborhood, I don't know that off the top of my head.
So that concern could come up in any proposed rural plan, that concern that they have?
So the Conservation Commission is asked to weigh in because this application requires a surface water conditional use permit.
Yeah.
So for a proposed development in the rural zone that would not require one, the Conservation Commission would not weigh in.
Okay. And then, I forgot to ask this first, but so there was 2 members that voted in favor of it. There's no minutes from this meeting and it's not recorded. Was there any reason given why they voted in favor of it?
Believe there are draft minutes from the meeting that were released today. I have not had a chance to review them.
I checked at 4 o'clock and they were not on there. There's no February meeting, minutes on the website, so. And then,
We only publish final minutes on the website.
okay. Where could people from the public or someone from this board find those minutes?
By asking the Community Development Department.
Okay, thank you. So also there was concern about runoff and stuff, but it looks like from the topography map that this property is sloped away from Gun Road, so any runoff would continue onto the property or to the applicant's property. Is that correct?
It would continue into the existing surface water resource, which unmitigated would damage that resource.
But is it going towards Gun Road or away from Gun Road?
It's going away from Gun Road.
Okay, thank you. I might have some other questions, but let some other board members speak.
So the steep driveway is sloped up to Gun Road?
It's sloped away from Gun Road. It is at the limit of what is allowed by our regulations. It's got periods of 15% slope, drops down to 11. I don't know, Jason's got it right in front of me, so he could give you the exact numbers.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it. The driveway goes to Gun Road, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, but the entire property slopes away from it, so it would be a descending driveway away from Gun Road.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Mr. Clancy, anything else?
For deliberation, but I'd like to hear if any board members want to ask city questions.
Okay. Mr. Cost, would you,
No, I'm just trying to keep up. So after this, then we have a chance to deliberate among ourselves. Right now, we're just asking specific questions? Okay, so I could wait for deliberation.
sure. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the deliberation with comments. Mr. Cost?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, this is difficult, I think, for everyone. I understand what the owner was saying about not wanting to put a house somewhere else on the property where it would infringe on family life and privacy and living out in this area. But on the other hand, so that's an impact and a decision. But on the other hand, by putting it here, it is encroaching on, you know, an environmental regulation that we have. And I think what Mr. Clements said about, you know, the city did create zoning to 2-acre zoning, but the idea of that was it has to be done in accordance with environmental regulations and requirements. And so it's sort of a balance of all of this. And, you know, so at this point, and again, I know there's personal reasons for everything, but it does appear that there could be options to develop the property and maybe mitigating some of the personal issues without impacting the surface water buffer. So that's what I'm mulling over in my mind on this. I understand it. I heard the owner say it, if this doesn't happen on this particular location, it's the end of it. But it does appear that there could be options and well-thought-out options that could mitigate all the issues that were talked about, just like the effort that went into mitigating the issues here. So, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Master Giovanni?
I agree with Ken, and I understand, and I've built houses over the years for my family, so I understand where you're coming from. But it's our job to follow the staff's recommendations, you know, for the city, for the greater good of the city. So with an 11-acre parcel, that's quite a chunk of land. And I would agree that where privacy is important, I think it's very important to protect the environment up on Gun Road too. So I think that we just have to do our job as board members and protect that. So that's kind of where I'm at with this.
Thank you. Mr. Rangel?
I think that the concerns that have been brought up are considerable, and there don't seem to be can't think of very many ways that you can really meet all of these, will address all those concerns appropriately with, you know. And I think, I agree that there has to be a balance between the development and the protection of the environmental features, so, you know, there may not be a way to do it in this case.
Mr. Clancy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the Conservation Commission, with their concerns, they also did give us, you know, some things they would like to see if we were to go forward. And, you know, with this, well, what is this? Is this an exemption or would this be an exemption or condition? You know, with this, you know, this being allowed for going from 75 to 30, I don't think this is.
That's a waiver, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think this is gonna be the first applicant that comes to us asking for this reduction. And I don't think we're gonna get an applicant that is so willing to work with us in trying to figure out how to make this work. And I think instead of looking at as a precedent, we look at as a pilot. Because they're trying to do a lot to reduce that mitigation. And I travel up Gun Road, and I'm in that area quite a bit, you know, walking the dog, and just southeast of this property is the Goose Pond area, and just north of it is Surrey Dam. So there's already a lot of conservation land, and that area is not gonna be built up over time. And the way that the property is sloped, runoff is gonna be going down their property. And, you know, that someone could put a fence up to prevent these deer from going through it, if that's a main concern. Someone could forest that area, and there'd be some runoff happening there. And so I think and the applicant has said that they're willing to do a lot and continue to do a lot to work with us. And from my point of view, I think this is an opportunity to look at how this could work. I know it's not ideal, but anyone coming to us is gonna have to go through this process if they wanna reduce this. So, you know, just because we set a precedent tonight doesn't mean it's always gonna get approved. And I don't think we're gonna get applicants that are this willing to continue working with the city and with the planning board. So it's a tough one because it does get iffy with conservation and, you know, protecting the water, but we need houses in the city, and, it's, you know, it's part of our master plan to balance those, and I think this is a way to pilot balancing those.
Thank you. Mr. Cost?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, kind of in keeping a little with what Mr. Clancy's saying, there's a couple, and we talked about an extension. I don't know if anyone wants to go through that, but this letter does leave a couple things open. We haven't seen the minutes of the discussion. And then the last paragraph, as you said, does give things that should happen if it gets developed. But what I can't tell from reading this is, do these things on the last paragraph mitigate the other paragraphs, and how much do they mitigate the other paragraphs? And what does the, you know, if these were implemented and maybe even other things, what does the Conservation Commission feel then? You know, is it meeting it halfway? Is it significantly reducing the impact? Is it not reducing the impact? So they're saying that the owner should do these things. We should ask the owner to do these things, but are they actually, you know, solving the other sentences? So if there was a reason to keep going, it would be maybe to answer those questions. I don't have the specific questions, but to get more to what this is saying. And maybe we don't have all the information.
Yeah, and that's essentially where I am. I have not been on the property, and even if I were to walk the property, I don't think I have the expertise that the Conservation Commission does. So I would kind of defer to their, you know, three concerns about the wildlife habitat, the potential for flooding, and the effectiveness of the proposed infiltration trenches and septic. So, I mean, those three things, I know there's addressed to some extent on the current application. You know, if we were to continue, I guess we would like to see something that would satisfy us and probably satisfy the Conservation Commission, that those three things were not as risky as they have led us to believe. So that's kind of where my head is at.
Mr. Chairman, can I add a kind of a point of clarification, sort of? So the word precedent is kind of challenging when it comes to land use deliberations. Your decisions do not set precedent. Each situation is unique in of itself. I would encourage you to discuss the buffer reduction request and the acceptance of the board for extraordinary measures. Your decision, if you decide tonight that the spruce trees meet the test of extraordinary measures, you may find future decisions to be challenging, to require things greater than that level. So that while you don't set a precedent in any specific thing, your body of work around the buffer reduction and extraordinary measures will eventually set an expectation, I guess is what I'm trying to say, if that makes sense.
Yep. Understood. Any comments on that particular point with respect to the buffer reduction waiver? Essentially, is the line of sycamore trees sufficient in your minds? Does it reach the level of extraordinary mitigation? Mr. Cost?
Thank you. I don't know, but I think if we're encroaching on the buffer and then put a line of trees, in my mind, I don't see how that doesn't encroach in on the buffer. And as I understand it, the trees go to 30 at the end of the encroachment. So I'm not sure how much that helps, at least me in my thinking. So again, I'm of the mind that if we think we could get more information and clarity from this letter, we could ask for it. Otherwise, you know, we should decide today. So.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in on the extraordinary mitigation? Okay. All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, staff's official recommendation on this would be to, if you're thinking about either denying or continuing, to clearly articulate to the applicant what you're looking for, so that they can come back in March and hopefully prove to you that this is the only location that's viable for development, and they meet your test of extraordinary for mitigation to warrant that buffer reduction. So our recommendation would be to continue to March to give the applicant another chance to provide that additional information, give you more time to read those Conservation Commission minutes, which I'd be happy to distribute to you tomorrow before we make a final decision. But
All right, thank you, Mr. Clements. My personal opinion is that if there are other more suitable places from a planning board perspective on their property, and they don't want to do that, that's fine. That's their decision as the owner of the property. If this is the one and only spot where they're willing to have a subdivision and a new home built, then that's their call. I don't think it's our purview to ask them to look at the rest of their property and say, where else could you put it? I don't know, that's just my personal opinion, but I do understand your recommendation to continue. And I think we need to be explicit in what we ask them to come back with, to be clear about that. So I personally would, at this point, like to see us continue to the March meeting. So I'm going to ask for a motion that we continue. Mr. Cost.
Sorry, not a motion yet, but I think in my mind, the questions are more for for me, or the Conservation Commission, to really talk about, does this last paragraph really address things and improve things and maybe even make them more comfortable? It's, so it seems like, and then the minutes, of course, and maybe less from the homeowner. I don't know how much more there is to get from the homeowners. I think
Okay,
they've
well, I
done a
think,
lot, and so to me, I think, what does the commission
I have
feel?
a question for staff. Is it reasonable for us to speak with the Conservation Commission about what they perceive to be extraordinary mitigation for wetlands? Or is
I'd
that
be,
something that we should know?
so the conditional use permit is your purview. So ultimately, you're the deciding body. So it's what you believe meets that test. So I would recommend either telling the applicant that their proposed mitigation does or does not in this meeting. If you're still unsure if the spruce trees meets it, in my opinion, that means it doesn't. So
Okay.
you need to be confident in that. In regards to the proving that there's no other viable site on the lot, that's part of the regulation itself for the conditional use permit, is that the applicant needs to prove that they have to encroach on the buffer because there is no more suitable site that meets the regulations.
Okay, understand. Mr. Clancy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if this property was already subdivided, it looks like this is the only possible buildable lot. So would that meet those requirements you just spoke of exhausting all of the property?
So you're saying if this lot was already subdivided before the ordinance? I guess I don't really understand the hypothetical.
No, right now, if this applicant was, if this was already parceled out, and this was someone that owned this piece of land that wanted to build a home, and would this hit the requirement of looking at the entire property for a buildable site?
You could not approve a subdivision for this shown 2-acre lot under the current zoning ordinance.
Okay.
It is completely unbuildable without the buffer reduction.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I personally believe that I would need to see a little more to understand that the spruce trees was extraordinary mitigation to protect the wetland at the 30-foot level. I don't know what that would entail, but I assume, Jason, that you would know more than I would, and perhaps you could come back with something that would convince us.
Yes, we can look into it. My intent of it was for soil stabilization, and because the hemlocks that is the main tree species there, which are not endangered. They're fairly prevalent. And was for soil stabilization to be at the base of those slopes and to act as a natural indicator of where the edge of the usable land is for this proposed lot. Yeah, I would feel it'd be unnecessary to put up a fence or any permanent structure like that. But we've all seen the line of spruce trees that have been planted or red pines that have been planted in a straight line. So it's gonna act more of as a natural buffer for them as the new homeowners, but also for soil stabilization, to go around the edge of the property, the usable land. Those are my two intents for that. And the reason I chose the spruces were, because due to the already prevalent hemlock, you tend to be in more acidic soils. And so spruces typically, grow in more acidic soils. If you're getting into between those two wetland pockets to the left, where it's in a lower spot, that tends to be more nutrient-rich soils, which is why you have your ashes and your maples, sugar maples in that area, which then there isn't any on top of here due to that, which is why I chose the spruce trees to act as a buffer. And the infiltration trenches on both sides of the house to collect the rainwater from the house as the impervious area, and then the swales to the dry wells for the impervious area of the driveway. And the concerns regarding the runoff off the back of the leach field, that's gonna be lawn. You can't plant anything within, or you don't wanna plant anything with substantial root mass
Right.
close to your leach field. So once they find your leach field, they ain't going anywhere else.
Well, I'm not sure I understand where we are as a board on this, but Mr. Clancy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking at this letter, I know there's a lot of questions that the Conservation Commission left open for us to figure out on our own, and I think it's a good thing to think about in the future when dealing with things that require the Conservation Commission input. But I think they gave us their answer to what they would like to see if this application moved forward. So if I would be comfortable adding these to the motion tonight and making a final approval, or making a vote on the.
Yeah, okay. I can see that as a minimum, I think. But there is, it's still in my mind, the question of extraordinary mitigation. And I'm not sure that the Conservation Commission really addressed that in the same way that we do. So I think that's still an open question in my mind. But perhaps that's, if we take this, the questions that are, or the recommendations that are in the Conservation Commission's, the last paragraph of their letter, which you've seen, presumably?
No, we weren't given a copy.
Okay, all right.
have the minutes of the
Okay.
meeting. We requested those.
All right, well, I don't think that this is I think this is public, so.
And Mr. Chairman, I had breezed through the draft minutes but I hadn't had time to finish reading through them as far as what they had recommended at the end. I do remember from the meeting that they did mention concerns regarding the dry wells and them collecting silt, and us doing a mitigation maintenance schedule for that. They had asked me what I recommended, and I kind of looked at it as with catch basins that the city has. They typically clean those out every spring because they collect sediment, sand, leaves. So my recommendation would be every spring to have the owners pop the lids on the dry wells, clean them out. Again, that would be beneficial to their property So they would benefit to that. And then we have on all our plans, like everybody who's on septic, pump your tank every 3 years. If it's failed, replace it, state requirements,
Okay,
all the
but
typical.
there are, I appreciate that. There are in this letter, several items that they would like to see addressed, if this project were to go forward. So I think we can, make sure that you have that tonight, if not tomorrow, and that we continue with those things, as well as some additional understanding of why you think the sycamore trees represent extraordinary mitigation. So, having said all of that, is that fair with you guys?
Yes, again, if there's a chance, we're really
Okay,
willing to
all right.
work with you. I think what I would wonder is, as an applicant, and I guess as the first applicant, is there anybody we could work with? I think we don't know what extraordinary means, and I'm not sure anybody knows. It doesn't sound, so is there anyone I could work with who could give us guidance? We want to give you everything you need, and we're, I think, looking for some help
Sure.
as to what would
Okay.
meet the threshold.
We will try to get,
And I would look towards the intent of the buffer. The intent of the buffer is to protect the wetlands from siltation, erosion. And the intent of the plan that I've submitted is geared towards that. So most of the time when looking at protecting wetlands, you're looking at siltation, degradation, of which mostly comes from impervious areas, then not able to infiltrate water, and then gushing out into the wetlands. We've all seen the scours from the rains this summer and all that. And so I would look into that as your intention, and that's what I looked at when I did this plan, was to look at mostly focus on the impervious areas, such as roof lines that don't infiltrate water, and stormwater, and the driveway, both of which will be captured and allowed to infiltrate in through the dry wells and the infiltration trenches along the roof lines. And then the septic is designed to the state standards, which has the same intentions to protect the wetlands. So many 2.5 feet above seasonal high water table or ledge, and then 50 feet to poorly drained wetlands.
okay, thanks. Having said that, could we get a motion to continue?
We'd like to move to continue the public hearing for PB 2024-01 to the March 25th, 2024 Planning Board meeting at 6:30 PM in the council chambers on the second floor of City Hall. We would request that the applicant be required to implement the mitigation actions recommended by their consultant, including the installation of infiltration trenches around the dwellings and native plantings along the driveway. We also request that the applicant be required to implement best management practices, including erosion control measures. And finally, the Conservation Commission had recommended that percolation tests be performed during winter and spring to evaluate soil drainage during wet months. And any other recommendations that staff had presented.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a second?
Okay, before a second,
Yep.
we talked about getting a definition of extraordinary.
Yes, yeah.
So somehow
will,
that's what we
we
want to
will need-
work on this month?
Yeah, we owe that.
Yeah, and
Oh, my question was regarding doing perk tests in the winter. When do we say that ends? Because that's coming up pretty soon. That's, I guess, more of a
Yeah, we're
defined
not
timeline.
yeah, I agree. We're not suggesting you wait till next winter. to do
Yeah.
it, so.
Seeing as though it's, I guess, putting a more defined date on those timelines when they would like the test pits done, because the ones I conducted were in October 13th of 2023.
Well, ideally, it would be before the next meeting, but if it can't be, then at least have a date set that you can commit to.
Those, we already conducted those when we had the machine out there. So when I'm doing the test pits, I'm looking, if you look at my logs here, I'm looking for seasonal high water table with redox features, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, that are persistent throughout the year. Not necessarily looking for water in the test pit. It's indicators of high water table and only has to be there for 2 weeks out of the year to create those features. And that's what I was looking at for test pits. So more than happy to reopen up the test pits during a wet time of year, but we didn't have any water in those test pits down to 30 and 50 inches, and I called my water table out at 22 and 27. So it's only not even 2 feet within, about 2 feet below the ground. So typically we don't reopen test pits, but we certainly can if it's deemed necessary during a wet time of year.
Well, you will have the language that we captured here, and then you can decide what makes sense or
Okay.
you've already done. Okay. Now look for a second.
Okay, so second it now.
All right, thank you. All those in favor of continuing? Any opposed? Motion is continued to the March meeting. Thank you. Appreciate all your,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
appreciate all your patience and effort here. Thank you.
Who should I be in touch with to work with to make sure we can do everything that would be helpful for you?
I think
there-
that'd be Evan.
Yeah, Mr. Clements, I think, will be in touch.
Yeah, I'll reach out to you guys tomorrow with what I think the board is looking for,
Okay.
for the March meeting.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is 19 Ferry Brook Road site plan for Cheshire County Shooting Sports Education Foundation. Will you guys be able to say
Yes,
a
Mr.
recommendation
Chair.
for completion?
This is Megan Fordson, planning technician. I'm going to be doing the staff reports for the two public hearings for tonight.
Okay, good.
So the applicant has requested exemptions from submitting a landscaping plan, lighting plan, elevations, a traffic analysis, soil analysis, historic evaluation, screening analysis, and architectural and visual appearance analysis. After reviewing each request, staff recommend that the board grant the requested exemptions and accept the application as complete.
Thank you. I am a member of this organization, so I'm going to recuse myself from the deliberations and voting.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Clancy.
Mr. Clancy?
Yeah, if you do recuse yourself and you have no, no dog in that fight, the board will not be able to render a decision tonight. So, and I think you could, though, ask for a continuation, even though you are a member. But it is up to you and the board to decide that.
I think I should recuse myself, so I don't know what else to tell you. So does that mean we're not going to talk about this one? Or we're going to continue it, or?
Do you want to?
I would let you speak.
All right. Yeah, I think my advice, and again, I understand your feelings, and I think that you're headed in the right direction. But so my recommendation would be to vote to continue because you don't have a quorum to decide this.
Okay. Can I get a motion to continue this?
I don't even know if that's.
I'd like to move to continue the public hearing on SPR-01-13, the modification on the site plan at Cheshire County Shooting Sports Education Foundation at 19 Ferrybrook Road.
Second?
I second that.
All those in favor? Any opposed? I apologize. It's unfortunate that we'll schedule you right off the bat next month. Sorry about that, fellas. All right. Okay. Now we have a modification. The next item on the agenda is SPR-04-21. It's modification number 3, the site plan for 100 Nights at 122 Water Street. Applicant BCM Environmental and Land Law PLLC, on behalf of owners of the 100 Nights Foundation, Inc., the Railroad Street Condominium Association, and the City of Keene, proposes to install security lighting around the perimeter of the 100 Nights site at 122 Water Street, TMP number 585-027-000. Waivers are requested from section 20.7.3.c and section 20.7.3.f.1.c of the LDC regarding light trespass onto the adjacent properties at 0 Water Street and 0 Cypress Street. These are TMPs number 574-041-000 and TMP number 585-026-000, and lighting hours of operation. The 100 Nights acres is 0.62 acres and is located in the downtown growth district. Okay. May I ask if staff has a recommendation for completeness of the application?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant has requested exemptions from submitting a grading plan, landscaping plan, elevations, a drainage report, traffic analysis, soil analysis, historic evaluation, screening analysis, and architectural and visual appearance analysis. After reviewing each request, staff recommends that the board grant the requested exemptions and accept the application as complete.
Thank you. May I have a motion to accept the application as complete? Ms. Master Giovanni?
Move to issue final approval for
Nope, nope,
S.
this is completeness of the application.
Oh, sorry. I got language.
You have one there? Just read the number. It's SPR 04-21 mod 3.
Yeah, I thought I was on that one.
Okay.
For SPR-04-21, we would like to move to find the application complete.
Second? Mr. Costa?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion for completeness? Any opposed? Okay, motion is accepted as complete. All right. I'd like to now invite you to, sorry you had to wait so long.
It's fine.
It's, you're up now.
Great, thank you. My name's Tara Kessler. I am a planner paralegal for BCM Environmental and Land Law, and we represent 100 Nights in this application. So the proposal before you is to install perimeter lighting around the 100 Nights shelter site at 122 Water Street. And the purpose of this lighting is to enhance security and pedestrian safety, and also to deter undesirable activity around the area surrounding 100 Nights. So I'm just going to point to my map, but I'll bring the microphone with me. That's okay. So the proposal is to install a total of 10 fully shielded LED light fixtures, 8 of which would be mounted on the existing fence, which is, this is the outer perimeter of the parcel, and it's also the same location as their exterior fence. So these LED lights would be mounted at a height of 10 feet above grade. They'd be facing out towards the abutting property, which is the Railroad Street condominium land. And actually, it was the abutting landowner, the Railroad Street Condominium Association, as well as the East Side Neighborhood Group that requested this lighting. They are concerned about activity around the site, and they felt like this lighting would be a big step in the way of improved security throughout the night. I know that the abutting landowner has also done a lot in the way of clearing vegetation around the exterior of the fence, and this will just be another way to enhance that security measure. There's also part of this proposal is the installation of 2 LED lights on the southwest corner of the existing building, just to improve the lighting at the corner of Water Street and Community Way, which is fairly dim right now. There's only 1 street light in that area and 1 building-mounted light. And also just to note, there's no lighting on the exterior of the fence today. So part of this proposal is 2 waiver requests. One of the city's development standards regarding lighting prevents a certain degree of light trespass onto abutting properties. That's the waiver for section 20.7.3.c, which states that the maximum light level of any light fixture cannot exceed 0.1 foot candle measured at the property line and cannot exceed 1 foot candle measured at the right-of-way line of a street. So I'll address briefly the waiver standards. The first is that strict conformity would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations. Due to the location of the fence, which is essentially on or very close to the parcel's boundary line, the exterior boundary line, it wouldn't be possible to meet the request of the neighborhood group and the abutting landowner for increased security without trespassing light onto their property, since it's exterior lighting. And we feel that it meets the intent of the ordinance or the regulations in that one of the development standards, or the purpose of the development standards is, one of them is pedestrian safety. And so this is aligned with that purpose. Go on to the second waiver, which is for hours of operation for when the lights would be on. And it's a waiver from section 20.7.3.f.1.c. And that's standard states that for 24-hour businesses, lighting levels shall be reduced by a minimum of 50% between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And we feel that strict conformity with this would be difficult to achieving the goals for the lighting. Right now, 100 Nights is a 24-hour business. They do intake guests between the hours of, I think it's 2 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. But really the goal is to deter activity all throughout the night. It is a downtown area. We would be meeting the standards for the light fixtures to be fully shielded. But I think we talked about doing a motion sensor at one point, but I think really to deter people from hanging out and congregating in that area, the lighting on all night would be the best solution. And so that's what we're proposing, and that's why we're seeking a waiver from this standard. I think I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I think I've addressed most of the lighting standards and the waiver criteria, but please feel free to ask. And
Thank you. Board members have questions for Ms. Kessler? Mr. Clancy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you explain more about, go a little bit more in depth about not you having motion lights?
yeah, well, with motion, so I think that's an option that the applicant's willing to pursue. I spoke with the chair of the Railroad Street Condominium Land Association about this last week, and I think they're open to that as well. It's just in order to really deter, so I think having the lights on show that it's a space that's lit. It's known that, you know, if somebody was walking by, they could see activity happening there, or they know that they're not going to want to come there because it's lit and do something that might be concerning from the standpoint of public safety. With motion sensors, I mean, it's just if somebody comes in and enters that space, then they'll come on and then they'll be deterred potentially. But having it on all the time, I think especially in a downtown area, might be a more secure measure. That's our standpoint. But again, if the board feels like motion activated sensors is needed, then that's something that we can discuss or that we'd be open to.
Other questions? Mr. Cost?
Thank you. Fully shielded, does that mean for dark skies, or is that what that means?
That's right. So that means no portion of the bulb inside the light fixture would be visible. So all of the light is directed downward to the ground. And so there wouldn't be any like glare like onto the roadways or into abutting property. So that's.
Thank you.
I would also like to know, I didn't mention this, so the reason, I think you may have seen on the application that we had the City of Keene as a signatory on the application. Just if there are questions about that, it's because this section of Community Way is actually a standalone parcel, and so they're the landowner to the west of the parcel. So both the Railroad Street Condominium Association and the City of Keene have signed on to this application. And have signed on to the final plan that you would have if you approve this application to sign.
Thank you for that. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, let's proceed to staff comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is Megan Fortson, planning technician. So the subject parcel is located in East Keene at the intersection of Community Way to the west and then Water Street to the south. The site serves as the new home of the 100 Nights Shelter, which occupies the southwestern corner of the parcel. The northern section of the lot serves as the parking area, and then the southeastern portion of the lot serves as outdoor space for the shelter. As Ms. Kessler mentioned, the purpose of this application is to install 8 new full cutoff light fixtures along the northern and northeastern portions of the existing fence, and then 2 new building mounted full cutoff light fixtures at the southwestern corner of the building. And then I'm not going to go into the specific question or specific sections, but as Ms. Kessler mentioned, they've requested 2 waivers from specific sections of Article 20.7, which are your lighting standards, lighting site development standards regarding the proposed hours of operation of the lighting, and then light trespass onto the adjacent city-owned parcel to the west, and then the railroad condo parcel to the north and east of this subject parcel. In terms of a determination of regional impact, staff have made a preliminary evaluation that the proposed site plan does not appear to have the potential for regional impact, but the board will need to make a final determination as to whether the proposal, if proposed, could have the potential for regional impact. Just to quickly run through the application analysis, the only site development standard that is applicable to this application is sections of Article 20.7, which again is your lighting standard and your site development standards. Section 20.7.2 basically states that floodlighting rather, is prohibited unless the community development director determines that there will be no negative impact upon motorists and neighboring properties, and the lights are directed toward the rear of a lot away from the road and neighboring properties and are placed on heat or motion sensors. It also says that uplighting is prohibited. The applicant is not proposing to install floodlights or uplight the property in any way, so this standard appears to be met. The next section of this standard states that all outdoor lights, including freestanding and wall-mounted fixtures, shall be fully shielded and/or dark skies compliant fixtures with no portion of the bulb visible. I think that Tara gave a good explanation of the fact that all of these fixtures are going to comply with that standard. And then the next section of the standard addresses glare and states that lighting shall be installed and directed in such a manner as to prevent glare at any location on or off the property. The applicant doesn't appear to be proposing to install the new light fixtures in such a way that glare will be created. And they have submitted the waiver request due to light trespass that has to do with the next section of the code, which states that the maximum lighting level of any light fixture cannot exceed 0.1 foot candles measured at the property line and cannot exceed 1 foot candle measured at the right-of-way line of a street. So again, a waiver is requested because the lighting levels at the boundary line with the community way parcel and then the railroad condo parcel are going to be well above 0.1 foot candle. And then where the two light fixtures are going to be installed near the southwestern corner of the building, there's going to be light trespass onto Water Street that's going to be above 1 foot candle. And then just in deciding whether or not to grant that waiver request, you'll have to take a look at the criteria that Ms. Kessler mentioned. The illumination section of the lighting standard states that all illumination shall be of a white light and shall have a color rendering index greater than 70 and a color temperature or correlated color temperature of lighting that shall not exceed 3,500 kelvins. The light fixture that the applicant is proposing to install has a color temperature of 3,000 kelvins, so this standard appears to be met. The next section addresses height and states that the mounting height of fixtures as measured from the finished grade to the top of the fixture or pole, inclusive of the fixture, shall not exceed a maximum height that's determined by zoning district. The applicant is proposing to install the fixtures at a height of 10 level above grade on the existing fence posts. In the downtown growth district, where the 100 Nights parcel is located, it would allow for a 20-foot maximum height, so they're in compliance with that standard. And then the last section has to do with the hours of operation, which basically state that outdoor lighting shall not be illuminated between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 p.m. with certain exceptions, such as security lighting, provided that the average illumination isn't going to exceed 1 foot candle. If the use is being operated, normal illumination shall be allowed during the activity and for not more than 1 hour before or after the activity occurs. And then for 24-hour businesses, lighting levels have to be reduced by 50% between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. rather. So again, the board needs to determine whether or not the waiver criteria have been met in that waiver request. I did include a recommended motion in the staff report for this application initially. However, the applicant has addressed both of them. She has owner signatures from all 3 parcels, and then she submitted 5 copies of the photometric plan. So our recommended motion is to issue final approval for the application this evening with no conditions.
Thank you, Megan. Board members have any questions for staff? Mr. Clancy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you remind me what the lighting situation on the other side of the trail is at the basketball courts is? Because that's adjacent kind of to this property, correct?
We're not aware of any lights there at the basketball court. But
Yeah, they have lights
Tara
that you
probably
can
knows.
turn on.
Sorry, I abandoned the table too soon. But I believe that they're motion activated. So if you wanted to play basketball, you could just push a button and turn the lights on. And I don't know how long they stay on for, but I believe it's probably for an hour or so. But I'm not sure the exact length of time. And there's no lighting further south along the rail trail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Ms. Master Giovanni?
Not really questions, but we did go for the site visit the other day, and because all the butters were encouraging the lighting, and mainly it was just city on the backside, I think the lighting's a good idea.
Thank you. All right, so at this time, we'll move, is anyone in the audience from the public to question or have a question or a comment about this application? Just raise your hand if you do. Seeing none. You guys are kind of lined up in a straight line for me, but, all right. Hearing none, I will close the public portion. And at this time, I will entertain a motion.
We'd move to issue final approval for SPR 04-21 Modification 3, as shown on the photometric plans identified as 100 night security lighting, prepared by Sharon Inc. on January 7th, 2024, and last revised on January 18th, 2024, with no conditions.
May I have a second?
And I second the motion.
Thank you. Discussion? Mr. Engel, do you believe this has any regional impacts?
No, I don't believe it has any regional impact.
Okay, thank you. For the record, thank you. Okay. Personally, I think it's exactly what the neighborhood and the abutters and the property were looking for, and I think it meets, the waivers are very legitimately, there's legitimate rationale for the waivers, so I think that that's fine, and that this meets all of our standards, in my opinion.
Mr. Chair, if I may as well.
Yes.
Just a reminder that you will need to vote on the waiver request and whether or not to grant those as well. So you're making a motion to issue final approval if you decide that's appropriate for this, and then again to grant the two waivers related to light trespass and hours of operation.
Okay,
So
Thank
just
you.
a reminder.
should we just do that first?
Waivers first, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
We
All
will
right,
listen to the
can,
person who knows.
could I ask for a motion to grant the waiver request to, what's the reference for the light trespass?
So let's see here. That is a good question.
It's 20.7.3C.
Correct.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Did we make a motion already on the original thing?
We did
Should
make a
ta-
motion,
should we-
but
should we table
we're
that first?
tabling that,
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
Do we need to vote on tabling it?
Sure. Motion to table the current request? The current
I'd
motion?
like to make a motion to table
The current
the
motion.
current
Yeah,
current
that's
motion request.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Okay. Tabled. All right, let's move to the waiver requests. then.
Okay, and then we would like to move to approve the waiver requests
Yep.
for the security lighting around the perimeter of the site at 122 Water Street. The waivers are requested from section 20.7.3.c and
Yeah,
section,
let's do one at a time. So stop there.
okay?
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, waiver requested. Now do the second one, which is the,
And we would also like a waiver request for section 20.7.3.f.1.c of the LDC regarding light trespass onto the adjacent properties at 0 Water Street and 0 Cypress Street.
And second on that.
Second, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Waiver is granted. All right, let's return, you have to re-motion the site plan.
I would like to move to issue final approval for SPR-04-21, modification 3, as shown on the photometric plans identified as 100 Night Security Lighting, prepared by Sharon Inc. on January 7th, 2024, and last revised on January 18th, 2024, with no conditions.
Thank you. Second,
And second.
Mr. Cost, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kessler. Okay. Moving right along. Our next item on the agenda is the capital improvement program. Thanks for your patience. Good night.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Karen Gray, the Senior Staff Accountant for the city, and I'm filling in tonight for Mary Howe, the Finance Director. I'm here tonight to assist in presenting you with the 2025 to 2031 City of Keene Capital Improvement Program. For those of you who already don't have a copy, it's available on the city's website, and if you know anybody else who needs it, you can please direct them there accordingly. The Capital Improvement Program is a comprehensive plan that covers a 7-year period, 2025 to 2031. It covers programs, projects, equipment that are funded by capital reserves, or they have an estimated cost of $35,000 and a useful life of over 5 years. The CIP is presented to you biannually and reviewed annually during the operating budget process. This is year 1 of the biannual document, and the 2025, the first year of the CIP, will be included in the 2025 operating budget that's now in progress and will be presented to City Council in May. The capital improvement plan is just a tool. It's a tool that the city uses for planning our future. It's guided by fiscal policy, for which goals are set by City Council and are outlined in the city's comprehensive master plan. The city's master plan is the tool that guides the city's vision and the CIP projects presented in this book. Each project in this book, if applicable, is tied to a master focus plan area. The CIP process has been long and had many, many reviews. It actually began with the departments compiling all of their requested projects last summer. Once their projects were compiled and submitted in, they're compiled by finance, and then we do multiple administrative reviews and financial reviews to balance the needs of the CIP with the financial impact on the taxpayers. We can't afford to put $200 million worth of CIP projects in 1 year. Some of our projects are very large and they're multifaceted, so we have to balance our planning so that it's hopefully a flatter impact to the taxpayers versus a lot of peaks and valleys. The 7-year CIP totals slightly over $200 million. 15.5% of that is being funded from grants. 41% is being funded by debt. 16.7% is being funded from capital reserves that the city has already set aside. And the remainder, 26%, is being funded by current revenues, the city's fund balance, which has been accumulated, and new capital reserve appropriations to fund future projects. A department overview was already held on Saturday, January 20th. I think some of you were there at least. And we've recently had 2 FOP meetings where each department presented every project in the CIP. After this evening, the next steps are there will be a public hearing on March 7th, the final FOP recommendation to City Council on March 14th, and then City Council adoption on March 21st. If you don't have any questions directly for me, I'll turn it over to Jesse, and then we can tag team any questions that you may have moving forward.
I have a quick question, if you don't
Sure.
mind. Could you just repeat the breakdown of the funding?
So it's currently 15.5% from grants. And but if you have a CIP book, I can actually tell you where it is also.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. I do have the
So
book right
on the
here.
bottom of page 2 of your CIP book, it lists all of the funding sources
Okay,
and the
great.
percentages of each.
Yeah, no, that's great. I
But
got it
if you
right
would
here.
like me
I got it
to,
right here. Thank you.
you're very welcome.
So Karen stole all my thunder. And I will also say, this is her last CIP.
This is my final CIP.
Oh.
I'm actually retiring.
Congratulations.
We are going to be a rudderless ship when she leaves, so, but thank you. And she did such a good job. I don't really have anything to add, except obviously I'm happy to answer any questions about particular projects or just the overall process. And then I just want to reiterate, the planning board's role here is to recommend that you, if you choose to do this, to recommend that you find the capital improvement plan in compliance with the master plan.
Thank you. Any questions for Karen or Mr. Rounds? Yes, Mr. Costa.
I do have the book and I read it. It's really great. So I have a question, though. I mean, there's a lot of projects, and I know each department thought through, and so there's no reason for me to get into that. But some of the projects, like I'm looking at one, the West Side downtown parking structure, it has a beautiful rendering. And then there's recommendations of the site. And I'm just wondering, in this process, say the budget's there and we need a garage, does this set the site, or over the time that could be anywhere else that makes sense as a study goes through and as the plans happen when the project finally gets going, right? So we shouldn't take I mean, some things are site-specific, like Main Street infrastructure, but some things could be more flexible, and like the downtown restroom or something could move from where it's here, and that's stuff that would come up through the process and maybe the master plan and also the planning board, right? So I shouldn't get too concerned that if it's at a site that,
Yeah, so I can answer that generally and also specifically. So generally, yes, if they're in out years, things can move, things can change. Generally, that means we're doing studies to try and figure things out. Specifically with respect to the parking garage, we're actually engaged right now in the very early stages of, I think do we have a contract down on it?
I don't know if, there might actually be a contract. If they're not, I believe that the funds have already been put into place.
Right, the funds are in place to fund a study to look at the feasibility of a garage, the necessity of a garage, as well as the potential location. So they've sort of said, here are some locations we know about, also tell us about locations that you think would be a good idea, but it's also, is it feasible and is it sensible? So it's all those questions wrapped into one.
so something like that's still at a study stage?
Yes.
Yeah, many of our projects are multi-phases, so they start with a study phase, then they go into a design phase, then they go into an engineering phase, and then they go into a construction phase. So I think the design phase of the parking garage was actually in the book, that prior book. So they move forward, actually, and many of them go from book to book to book, depending upon the length of the project.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Clancy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So from the book that we got, and I know there's been some meeting, is there anything that has been taken out or changed from those meetings?
Not at this point in time.
Okay.
But just so you know, if the city were to receive a grant for one of the projects between now and the budget adoption process in May, we would actually make adjustments to the funding before the operating budget is approved in May. So that is done, the CIP does not become, the money for the CIP does not become final until the operating budget has been adopted by city council. So we do keep a lookout for any grants or anything that come between now and then.
And just one more question for.
Yeah, please.
On
Mr.
page,
Clancy.
on page 119, under parking funds for revenues, it looks like it's going up every year. Can we, when you're doing those calculations, you can't factor in like Main Street downtown, reconstruction, because that will eat into that revenue if it does happen. But since that's not currently there, that's why these projections are the way they are.
The parking fund is a standalone fund. Water and sewer and parking are standalone funds. So the only things that can be charged to the parking fund are parking-related projects. You can't charge water to the parking-related project or any crossover. Parking is strictly parking.
Yeah, well, because I'm looking at the projection, so I'm just trying, it's going up and not going down in some years because that project hasn't been approved.
That's correct.
Yes.
Because that would eat into revenue.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, appreciate it. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to recommend that the CIP is consistent with the existing master plan. Ms. Master Giovanni?
Mr.
yeah,
Chair,
sure.
well, I didn't want to jump because I just wanted some, because I got fixated on the parking section and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so I'm looking at the EV charging stations, and it looks like it's cash from the revenue source, and maybe they're waiting for a grant to approve that project.
Which page are you on?
I'm on 115, but then there's saying that it comes out of cash is on I think 124.
Okay.
And so looking over at the current master plan, I'm sure the new master plan would, but we got to look at the one that we have now. And so I look at, I don't see anything about subsidizing a particular vehicle. And in that plan, I see, public transportation being, concerns and parking. And so I just want to know, does that go with our current master plan? Does subsidizing something, a particular vehicle go with our master plan? That one I got hung up on. Just because it caters to the individuals and not to the city as a whole.
Yeah, I don't know the specific answer to that. There definitely was a high theme of sustainability in the 2010 master plan, but I'm not sure they got into too much detail with respect to electric vehicles. So, given that it's outside the 2-year budget, I'm not sure it's a huge concern, because by the time anything would be required for this project, it's going to be subject to the new master plan. If that's an accurate statement.
Yeah, but we're working with the current master plan, so.
Correct.
For me, it just doesn't relate so much, and, there's a couple other things in here, and I know as a planning board, we don't have much say over this stuff, but it's, in terms of what we're working with for master plan, it seems like some things don't correlate to the people of the city, or the business community, or the wants and needs of the actual city, so, I, as a planning board member, I don't see where, I understand it's in our bylaws to approve this and say it goes with the master plan, but.
Yeah, I understand, and there's really, it's either approve or not approve, and there's no, like,
Yeah.
line item veto of any particular things we find that are not in line with the master plan, but. Mr. Cost?
Yes, thank you. I mean, each project, I think it does a great job where it says goals, master plan, vision, and there's a really nice write-up here that links it to a goal of the master plan, of the existing one. And so I thought that's a good link and maybe answers the question.
And, yeah, Mr. Can I can-
Yeah. Mr.
Yeah,
Clancy.
and so I read those and, you know, again, this was just one that I highlighted in here. And sometimes I feel, especially in joint meetings, when we are voting on, does it relate to the master plan? I feel like sometimes we are given pieces of the master plan that work for that particular project. But then within the master plan, there are other things that kind of contradict or don't correlate to that project. So, you know, when I see things like that, you know, I take it with a grain of salt and try to bring in the whole master plan. And so that's where my thoughts is. And again, we can't pick and choose and say this one doesn't relate or.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. It's, again, we're sort of limited as a thumbs up or thumbs down. Mr. Rounds, did you want to add something?
I'm not sure if I have a right to interject, but I would just say that Mr. Cost's assessment, that goals, master plan, vision section does reference sections of the master plan. And I will also agree that there are times when the master plan contradicts itself. That's what master plans do. They have to cover an entire vision for a community, and sometimes they can say two things that contradict each other. And I would also mention here that the EV charging plan and stations are part of one of the goals of the strategic energy plan, which was a goal of the master plan. So they sort of build on each other.
Thank you. All right. Now I would, yes, please.
So currently, we're putting together a new master plan steering committee, and that master plan, I assume, is for the years that correspond with the new CIP program. So, or am
Well,
I-
it's the next 10, well, in theory, it should be updated for 10 years,
Yeah.
but the master plan will be produced, if you will, in 2025. So it'll be, in theory, good till 2035.
So am I to assume that this steering committee will work in coordination with those who create the, capital improvement program?
The other way around, but
Or
yes.
sort of,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
they work
we-
together?
Master plan goes first, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know that that's a goal of ours moving forward.
All right, thanks. Now I'll ask for a motion.
We'd like to move to recommend to the city council that capital improvement program for the years 2025 to 2031 is consistent with the comprehensive master plan.
May I have a
I
second?
second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is approved that the master plan is consistent. I'm sorry, that the capital improvement program for 25 to 31 is consistent with the current master plan. Okay, next item on the agenda is a fee schedule update. I'll look to staff for that. Are you ready
Thank you,
for that, or
Mr.
you want to push that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're not, it's kind of a staff update sort of thing. It's something that we're bringing up. We have to come up with a price for the conditional use permit application for the cottage court overlay that's going to be coming to the joint committee, so that needs to get put on to the board's fee schedule. And then we're also looking to change how we do abutter notices. Currently, we do it by a certified mail. There is another product that the post office offers. It's called a certificate of mailing, which provides a verification that the letters have been received by the post office, which meets the statutory requirement for verified mail. And that product is much cheaper for the applicant than the current certified mailing rate. So we're making that adjustment to all land use boards throughout the city as well.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we're also adding some additional fees related to our review of earth excavation permits.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because the regulations for gravel pits and earth excavation were written a long time ago, so they've got different requirements than all of the other normal applications that come before the board, and they kind of get into oh, you can only charge no more than $50 for an earth excavation permit fee, but there's nothing in statute saying you can't charge an application fee. And considering the amount of effort it takes to go through an earth ex permit, we're hoping to adjust those numbers to offset those costs to residents for applicants.
Thank you. All right, moving right along, master plan update. We do have one personnel change that I would like to, let's do that first. So we have a motion, Ms. Mastrogiovanni.
We'd like to move to accept Armando Rangel's resignation from the Master Plan Steering Committee and elect Pamela Russell Slack to serve in his place.
May I have a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? No? Let's move to a vote then. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is accepted. And Armando, thank you again. I appreciate your graciousness and all that. Okay. Now for the master plan update. We did have our first meeting on February 6th, if I got the date right. 16 of the 17 people were there, which was great. We also got an introduction to the consultant, Future IQ. And we spent a lot of the meeting fleshing out some expectations from the various members, as well as what I'll loosely call data requests. So information that the steering committee would like to see to kind of get grounded and context for moving forward. So next meeting is March 12th. Trying to remember why it was moved, but it's moved because, I think it's because something else was on March 6th, right? I can't remember what, but next meeting is March 12th. Okay. I don't know, I mean, I can answer any questions you have about that, Mr. Clancy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to go back real quick to Mr. Rangel's letter. So he said that the city attorney advised that some planning board members should be asked to leave. Can you go in a little bit more detail on that? And did the city attorney recommend that some step down? Or
The specific, city attorney advised that if a quorum, 5 members were available, we're at a master plan steering committee meeting, then that would count, or it would need to be counted as a planning board meeting and would need to be noticed, et cetera, in that way. And that's not the way we want to proceed. So
So was in Mr. Rangel's letter, is some planning board members the city attorney's recommendation, or just one?
He wanted it to not run into a situation where we would have 5 at a meeting. So we think that if we keep the membership to 4, which is where it is right now, that we would be safe. Any other questions? Okay. Staff update, or was that covered?
The only other thing that I have, Mr. Chairman, is at the last meeting, there was a request from the board to get a little bit more information about the storing of hazardous and toxic materials in self-storage. I didn't have a chance to look at leasing documents. However, I did do some preliminary research on a bunch of different self-storage vendors in Cheshire County, and all of them are very clear that they do not permit flammable, hazardous, toxic materials on site, and they reserve the right to inspect belongings as they enter the site to ensure that those materials are not stored at their facility.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Clements. Not to belabor that, but what do they do if somebody stores a boat or a car or a motorcycle?
Yeah, so I recall that's another more or less like prohibited item, that they don't allow like garaging of vehicles.
Okay.
And things of that nature. So, and I believe they basically they reserve a right to be like, yeah, no way.
Okay.
And so, yeah, and they talk about like perishable items, foodstuffs, things that will mold, and they give recommendations for how to store those things safely. So,
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Clements. Any new business anyone would like to put forward at this late hour? Okay. All right. So upcoming, following our upcoming dates of interest, Joint Committee of the Planning Board and PLD will be March 11th at 6:30 PM. Planning Board Steering Committee call will be March 12th, 11 a.m. Planning Board Site Visit, March 20th at 8 a.m., to be confirmed depending on the applications that we have before us. And then finally, the next meeting of the regular Planning Board, March 25th, 6:30 p.m. at this location. So I will now adjourn this meeting at 8:52 p.m. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's hanging in there. Thanks, Roberta.